What's up? It's your girl Janessa, and this is Find Your Wild with a Y podcast. Welcome back. Today we have the honor and pleasure of having Dr. David Lipman with us. Dr. David Lipman is the owner of Physical Evidence Chiropractic out in Boca Raton, Florida. He is a seasoned chiropractic physician who has successfully treated thousands of patients. He has a very deep personal commitment to biooptimization because Dr. Lipman is in his 60s and he has achieved extraordinary levels of strength and endurance and overall health. So essentially his mission is to share the knowledge and processes that have profoundly benefited his own life and helping others to achieve optimal health and wellness. So thank you, Dr. Lipman, so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Janessa. It's my pleasure, really.
I will include all of your socials in the notes of this podcast, but you can find Dr. Lipman on Instagram, Boca Raton Chiropractor, and also for YouTube, TikTok as well. So that is his handle name. And then I will include all of that again in the notes of the...
And just to mention, too, we have a URL, physicalevidenceconnect.com. That will take you to a form fill where you could ask me questions, give me your information, and I can respond to you directly, too. So that's physicalevidenceconnect.com.
Okay. And I will, again, I'll mention that at the end as well, just so everybody knows. But we'll kind of jump into why you're here today. So you're one of the kings of biooptimization, and I would love to kind of explore what that means. So if you can just tell the audience, what does biooptimization actually mean?
Well, for me personally, it's evolved over time, but now that I've come, this long into my career, about 40 years, and then my own personal health journey, which started at 10 years old, I learned how we're able to do things to assist our bodies in healing better, to regenerate things better. So, it's not just about the injuries that you have, it's how you manage them, but drilling it down to the most basic function in our bodies is the cell. Our cells are the basic unit of functioning for whatever tissue we're talking about, brain, heart, muscle, bone. Those cells are where all of the, initial processes of creating, the workings and the functionality of our bodies. And so we now have the ability to really drill down and optimize energy production at the cellular level, because that's what makes all of it, work in terms of, regeneration and recovering, and to not age as quickly as we tend to. So an interesting fact that I learned not too long ago is that we've identified over 32,000 diseases in humans, and there's one common denominator in everything we call disease, and that is a loss of energy production at the cellular level. Now that says to me, we have 32,000 plus symptoms of the real culprit, and that's losing energy production at the cell. So biooptimization focuses on how can we optimize cellular function through cellular energy production. That's what that means.
I love that. And I think you and I have had several conversations about this and how traditional medicine, which I don't want to bash that, right? Because there's a place for it. But a lot of the times they're not looking at things on a cellular level. They treat based on symptoms and body parts, right? You have like cardiovascular, you've got, all the different specialties. And so nothing is kind of seen as a whole body approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. I think once people became specialists in healthcare, they forgot about the rest of the body. and that's exactly, I think that's one of the keys, because I remember even my primary pediatrician when I was a kid, when I needed stitches, he did it. When I, dislocated my shoulder, he put it back in. They did everything. They were general practitioners. And I think we've lost a lot in healthcare when, as you just pointed out, we've gone to specialization.
Yeah, which is kind of concerning, but we're going to try to help that, right?
Yes.
So we talked a little bit about methylation before, again, in our previous conversation. So if you can just kind of talk about methylation, genetic mutation, just high level, and why biooptimization is important for pertaining to methylation and genetic mutation.
Yeah, so it's methylation being important for biooptimization. Again, the end goal is to get optimized energy production in our cells. So we have to understand what are some of the obstacles. Well, as you just mentioned, methylation, which is how our bodies convert the nutrients that we get from food that we eat or supplements that we take into the form that the body can actually use at our cell level. So we can't use the vitamins and minerals that come in from food and supplements as they come in. We have to take it through a process in our cells called methylation, and that's how we're converting the molecules so they align with our intercellular functions and make the things we need to make. The end results are hormones, neurotransmitters, enzymes, amino acids, B vitamins, all the things that we need to make to function optimally. And the fact is that many of us, not just a few of us, but many of us have inherited a mutation to this process, either from one parent or in some cases both parents, which will either impair or completely, disable your ability to make these conversions. So, in my opinion, every pediatrician, the first day they see a child, they should be doing this testing on them because this methylation issue will affect their entire lives because you're born with these mutations and you'll die with them. And so that the earlier on you're able to, get this information, you'll be so well equipped to know how do we now take what we've learned here and modify the way we take in supplements so we can get the things and make the things that we need to make. And so it's one of those things that I think everybody should take because it will affect the body's ability to function optimally. And so it's a very simple test. You could do it as a blood test or even a cheek swab. And again, you only have to do it once, but it can explain to you why is it that I'm anxious? Why am I depressed? Why don't I sleep well? Why do I tend to worry so much? Why am I a little bit more aggressive? How come I'm a little bit attention deficit? All these things come down to our body's loss of the proper biochemical balance of the things that we're not able to make because we're not processing. So again, it's so important to have this information so then you could really take charge and say, okay, I know I need to have these things and I'm not converting them. So instead of taking this, let me take this because this is going to bypass what I'm not doing. So you could actually supplement specifically for those deficiencies and those mutations that your body's not doing.
Yeah, and I think just to speak from my own story, I didn't find out I had it's commonly called MTHFR, right? That is like the
That's one
acronym.
of them. Yes, that's the
Okay.
most common one.
Okay. So I did not find out that I had this genetic mutation until I was in my 40s. I already had alopecia. So, you're taking all these supplements trying to control things that I don't really understand yet. And then I find out I have this genetic mutation, which is great. My blood looks great, right? And we can elaborate on this when I'm taking all these supplements, but my cells can't take these supplements in because I can't methylate.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that more, but it to your point, this absolutely, in my opinion, should absolutely be a test that's done for kids because I've gone on 40 something years now just figuring this out. And I can imagine the damage that happens too when you're not getting enough of the nutrients for your organs to function. Um,
Yeah, you can't. I mean, we need nutrients. We need macros, of course, but we need the micros to be able to give us cells because we have 30 to 50 trillion cells, and every one of these cells has this process in it in order for them to take in nutrients and use them. Because what shows up in a blood report in your bloodstream is not a reflection of what you're getting. You might be great with vitamin D and magnesium and potassium in your bloodstream, but it doesn't mean it's in your cell, and it's in the cell that where it's needed, and where those biochemical reactions are happening that are getting your cells to function and make the things that they need to make. So there's four other ones. There's more than five of these, but they've identified these particular five. The MTHFR, which of course is the most famous one because of the word. It looks like it's kind of spelling out without the vowels, but it's there's other ones there, and they're responsible to continue to convert some of these things that we need. And so what I think and what we do here in the office is that we don't just do the methylation profile to see where those deficits are. We actually look inside the cell to see what deficiencies exist, because that, as I said, is where the nutrients are needed. So once you have both of these reports that show you your actual deficiencies and to show you what you're not converting properly, then you can really create a custom supplement program that's going to address these deficits. So now you could have meaningful supplementation instead of just, for the sake of, supplements. In my practice, which is almost 40 years of doing this, I never sold supplements because somehow inherently I knew that you can't just throw the same supplements at everybody. People would ask me, what do you take? And they say, oh, I take this, this, and this. Well, why don't you sell them? I said, well, because I'm not sure if that's good for you. I didn't know until more recently when we've started to do these tests that you could actually identify this. And now you can truly customize that for somebody. So it is so much more information that an individual can have about themselves. And once you have it, it's so easy to make the recommended changes and know exactly what you need and what forms. Now, the other thing about the mutations is you have to know what you shouldn't be taking in. Because if you, as an example, are not converting folic acid or folate, which is basically sprayed on all of our wheat products, our white flour and all that, you can't convert that. You're building up, toxic levels of things your body shouldn't have those levels of because you're not converting it. It also means that if you happen to be somebody that drinks energy drinks, except for two of them or maybe three, every single one of those energy drinks has vitamin B12 in the form of what's called cyanocobalamin. Cyanocobalamin is synthetically derived from like sewage processing places. And so if you're not able to convert that because you have the MTHFR homozygous, meaning both parents gave that to you, and you're drinking these things, you're actually building up cyanide in your body, as crazy as that sounds.
Oh
So
my God.
nobody should be taking in cyanocobalamin, even if you haven't tested yourself. You always want to go with methyl B12, which is methylcobalamin, because then you don't have to worry about methylating it because it's already coming in methylated form. So again, learning how to bypass what your body's not doing is also something great to derive from these. And there's certain foods, again, you should not eat. Like I said, wheat products, bread, pasta, those things have folic acid and folate. And if you can't convert it, you're taking in things your body has to detoxify from, as crazy as that sounds. And your ability to detoxify is impaired because your liver requires some of that MTHFR functionality to do detox. So it's, again, so important to have this information about ourselves.
Yeah, and I was just going to chime in too, again, speaking from my own personal experience. I have been suggested not to drink alcohol because I can't detox. So it's just basically cycling through my bloodstream, through my liver. And, if my liver can't get rid of it, it's just causing massive inflammation, I'm assuming, along with
Yeah.
other issues. So,
Yeah, it's toxic. It's a
yeah.
poison. If we're not breaking it down and we can't pass it through, like you said, the liver breaking it down, it's poison.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's a really good point because you're pointing out the factor number one that we need to understand what our cells need or what we're deficient in, and then how this impacts us if we can't break it down, how we're just adding to the toxicity in our body, which is
Yes.
hugely important. Okay, so I know we kind of talked about this before. People from military who have had PTSD or past trauma or sports injuries, because I know that you've experienced injury before as well. So I don't know if you want to speak on that. How can this help those specific people?
So PTSD, again, can be exaggerated. Doesn't I mean, obviously, in war, you're experiencing things that just go against all humanity and what we've been brought up from a moral standpoint. And then to try to live with that kind of thing is just I can't even imagine. I was fortunate that I've never had to go through that. However, PTSD is something we could have from everyday activities, just as civilians. And part of understanding methylation is that we can have exaggerated responses to things that happen to us that are like go beyond what the actual incident is. And, inability to make the nutrients and, being able to methylate properly, as an example, can cause a hyper response to something that really doesn't quite warrant the level of worry or fear or anxiety in the real situation, but because we are, in an inability to create the right levels of neurotransmitters, the things that will counteract like adrenaline. Like it's one thing if we're in a room and all of a sudden a lion comes in, we're going to be in sympathetic flight or fight. Either we're going to try to kill this thing or we're going to run like hell. But that should be short lived. The problem is that even in our minds, if we're even thinking about this lion in the room or some other thing that we've encountered or even haven't encountered but imagining to happen, it can create that same thing, and it sustains this sympathetic, norepinephrine and adrenaline and all these things that's supposed to be short term, and that can get caught in this loop. And again, part of being able to deal with this is to make sure that you're getting the nutrients so you are in balance with neurotransmitter production, that you have the ones that are by the parasympathetic nervous system, the things that are more calming to your body and your mind, and to be able to repair. And, because when you're in adrenaline, when you're in fight or flight, you're not repairing. Your body's, into functioning and doing what it needs to do. But parasympathetic functioning is when we're doing all that recovery and repair. And we need to be in that mode to be able to continue to really regenerate and stay ahead of our degenerative processes that way. So PTSD, can benefit from identifying those things because of those reasons, being able to make the proper neurochemicals so we don't get stuck in that loop and we're not, deficient on the things that would be, keeping us calm. So the other thing I wanted to just mention is oxygen. I've been fortunate. There's a project out here called the 22 Project. It's started by a couple that live close by here, and they are donating to military personnel that have had PTSD and have had traumatic brain injuries, and they're getting local places in the community to, for a month, give them hyperbaric treatment. They're scanning their brains, and they've actually got a scanner that shows where PTSD or traumatic brain injuries actually manifest in the brain. The traditional ways of looking at that have not been able to uncover that. So it leaves these, men and women who know that they're feeling these things and experiencing them like they think they're crazy because nobody can show them structurally that this has happened. So through this process, they're getting high levels of oxygen through hyperbaric treatment to get into the cells that have been damaged, and it actually helps to regenerate those cells because of the amount of oxygen that you get with hyperbaric. So again, the idea of biooptimization has a lot to do, again, with energy production at the cell level, and oxygen must be present for that to happen. In fact, if any moment in time we're making energy, if oxygen's not present in the cell, we still make energy, but only at about 2 horsepower. Think about it as horsepower. But when oxygen's present, it's at 36 horsepower. It's a big difference between
Yeah.
having cells at 2 horsepower versus 36. It's 16 times more. And that is largely too, when we're not biooptimized, how degenerative processes and things that we're calling pathologies or diseases are happening simply because we are not making energy at the cell level the way we need to because of lack of oxygen.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And like you said, if you have these genetic mutations, which probably most of us do, we're not breaking things down. It's not feeding the cells like it needs to. So it's just like this snowball effect, which is awful. And then, you go to a regular doctor, they give you meds, but you're not treating the problem, which is just a Band-Aid.
Right. Tapping into the body, understanding the way the body works. And again, it's just become the onus of us as, individuals to be a self-care advocate instead of looking into a system that really is not made to have you healthy.
Yeah.
This system, unfortunately, the business model is based on, being sick. That's how the money is made there. But that just gives us the opportunity now to learn more about how our bodies function. And, podcasts like these, and there's so many out there now, and people really empowering people to really take control of that, because we have to. Our kids are the most unhealthy generation that have come up in history as far as we know.
Mm-hmm.
And, what I like about Bobby Kennedy is that he has a passion for wanting to get our kids healthy again. And it's so important because, the way we've been kind of brought up with food and processed stuff is just gotten so out of hand. And this younger generation now has the least or the lowest life expectancy of any generations that have come up behind it. And so,
Mm.
it's so important for us to empower ourselves and teach our children how to take care of themselves. I mean, since they're not doing it at school, it kind of becomes like a grassroots effort, from us in these communities online, and, to get together even locally, and to try to, be a resource and teach people this is what they need to do for themselves, and pass that on to their kids, because it's not going to get better in the environments around here. It's probably just going to deteriorate more. So we really have to be empowered and empower each other to do that, I think.
Yeah, and you and I have kind of talked about this, how I feel like there's a movement in this direction, with the parents just kind of seeing, I don't know, if the veil has dropped. They're just kind of seeing a little bit clearer. And I know Robert Kennedy has been, I mean, I've followed him for a long decades now, and he's
Hmm.
spoken up about this for a long time. So it's kind of nice to see him in the spotlight, really shining and speaking the truth on health in this whole industry.
Absolutely. I mean, I was, his uncle, John Kennedy, had the President's Council on Physical Fitness, and we were required in gym class, when I was growing up, to meet these levels of requirement of in terms of physical fitness. We couldn't graduate high school without it. And back in the 50s, they actually had even a higher level for 4,000 high schools across the country to have, gym class had to be these very, very rigorous, things where you had to do a certain amount of push ups and pull ups and, going on the monkey bars and run, a 50-yard dash in certain, timing, the emphasis on physical education and physical fitness and healthy lifestyle was so strong. And unfortunately, what's happened in our probably last 40 or 50 years, we've been so focused on making life easier for us
Hmm.
that we don't get the stress adaptation that we need to continually get our bodies to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Who says that after 40 it's all downhill? It doesn't have to be, but we have to do more to make life less convenient and to do more physically so we continue to do that. All the blue zones where the people around the world that are living to 100, 150, 15, they're all very, very active, and most of them live in like mountainous regions. So, like, just walking to the store, they got to go up a hill. So we usually drive. Unless we're fortunate to be able to have our resources where we can be in walking distance. But again, the more convenient life has gotten, the more unhealthy we've been. And who wants to live to 90, 95 if you need a walker and an oxygen tank just
Yeah.
to go out? I mean, it's crazy, but again, it puts the onus on all of us to, we have to shift things around. We can't wait for the government or the powers that be to do it. We have to help each other do it, I think.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. And my husband just left being a PE teacher and a coach, and the stories that he would come home with about these kids and the parents really enabling the kids, like, oh, Johnny has a toenail issue, so he's not gonna run. And my husband would be like, wait a minute, he can walk. Well, the doctor said he shouldn't move, but he's 300 pounds and he's 13 years old. My husband's like, okay, this is the problem. Or he's having a bad day. Well, if you understand how exercise works, you probably are going to have a better day once you get a little movement in. But, it's just a different generation. And I think you're right. I mean, it's our job right now to just kind of pave this new pathway.
Absolutely. And, I remember as a kid, mom didn't want us in the house. Get outside, get
Yeah.
out of here, go ride your bike, go play sports with your friends, go play. And, we just had to be in when the street lights, came on so we can come in for dinner and such. But that's not even, that's not the theme of today. There's too much for people to do inside, and it's mindless stuff with devices, video games, being on the phone, and it's robbed us of so much. And it's very insidious on how it happens. And, I have teachers that I treat that have been teaching for 40 years. They said they've never seen a generation of young children or, even middle schoolers that are so inept when it comes to problem solving
Hmm.
or critically thinking because they've been asking Siri for the answer for the last 15 years, and they haven't developed that part of their mind, which they need desperately as adults to be able to go through life. Unless we're going to be dealing with a dumbed down society, and maybe that's what this is all about too. I don't know. We could
I'm
probably go off on a tangent there. Maybe we won't.
I will just touch on this one last thing. My husband is now a vice principal, right? In my kids' school district and in his school district, they restricted no cell phone policy at school. So it was a
Oh, nice.
huge problem the first couple of days of school. The kids were freaked out. Some of the parents were freaking out, and they just said no cell phones. And my husband said, it's wild because I walk into the lunchroom and normally it's dead silent, everybody's on their phone.
Well,
But he said I walk in and it's loud, everybody's talking, everybody's laughing. It's just a totally different experiment. And he said, I had one high schooler come up to me and say, Mr. Dade, I don't I don't want to say this, but I actually really like not having my phone. And I thought that's crazy for a teenager to tell him, because that's all they've grown up with are these
right.
devices, and they're just mind numbing. It's just an adrenaline, that high that you get from
And
scrolling.
dopamine. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
dopamine fix. It's and it's insidious that and it's our fault. We've been too quick to adopt technology and just integrate it right into society without really looking at what's the long term effects of this stuff.
Yeah.
How is this harming us psychologically, emotionally, physically, because we're not moving as much because of it? The world's coming at us. And think about it, the digital world comes at us very, very differently than the way the natural world comes at us.
Mhm.
Our five senses are taking in the natural world around us, and it doesn't come at us like this, which is what the digital world is. Imagine the long term effects on our neurological functioning and our brains and our perceptions of things are. That digital world, which is very artificial, has become the more reality for people. No wonder people are just going crazy, and kids are so lost. And they're getting these dopamine fixes. But I'm just going to mention this really quickly. I read a study, I think last week. They studied rats. They always study rats because they're very similar to human in terms of how we respond to things, and they're able to derive a lot of good information that they can apply to us. So they had rats in captivity, and rats will learn how to pull a lever to feed themselves. And so, they figure out how to pull a lever. This is how I feed myself. And after they've conditioned them to do that, they added a second lever, which gave them cocaine.
Mm.
And after a little while, they started pulling the cocaine lever before they would pull the food. And eventually, they were just pulling the cocaine lever. And they discovered that the amount of dopamine in the brains of rats that were doing that was so much higher. Because here, again, there's a couple of things. They're stuck in captivity. They're in this little small box. They could eat or they could do cocaine. Food in that situation wasn't raising their dopamine, but cocaine was. Then they took the rats and they put them out into a natural environment. Cocaine was there, but they weren't going for it because the natural environment outside is giving them all the dopamine they needed to be able to
Interesting.
flourish and not even need that. So think about kids that are in their homes all the time, watching TV, watching their phones, playing video games. They're doing this for this dopamine rush because they're not outside getting it naturally.
Yeah. That is very interesting. Wow.
Yes.
Kind of scary. Kind of scary. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. So, since we're on the topic of drugs and there's this whole opioid epidemic, it seems like right now, how can people with chronic pain benefit from doing something like this versus taking, you know, opioids to help with that?
Yeah. Great question. I talk about this pretty much daily with patients. It's important for people to understand what really causes pain. Most people have been, have been led to believe, and I don't mean in an intentional way, in a negative sense, but people tend to equate pain with some kind of structural damage. I have a herniated disc, or I have arthritis, or I have spinal stenosis. But pain is really a perception by specialized nerve endings in our body that need to have some kind of inflammation to stimulate them. Now, inflammation can come simply because the things that we're exposed to our environment are causing inflammation in our body, toxins, things like that. Not converting things properly inside the cell because of methylation problems could lead to increased inflammation because we can be building up high levels of homocysteine, which is an amino acid, but it's supposed to stay in balance with this other amino acid called methionine. And so when we're not converting those can set things off. So inflammation and the cause of it has to be understood first. Once you do, then you could see how is it because of injury that you're in pain? And are you going to be managing that pain? And is that really the focus? Because that says to me, pain is something that you're going to have to live with, and we're going to have to figure out how to, kill that pain, as opposed to looking really drilling down and saying, well, maybe the pain is not because of structural damage. So what's left? It's dysfunction in the way our bodies are holding us and moving us. So musculoskeletal issues have a lot to do with fascial pain and nothing to do many times with structure itself. So you have to find somebody that really understands that, that concept, that you're not looking at the place of pain again with that microscope, but you're looking broader to see what is the real genesis mechanically or biomechanically that's causing that pain. Because if you can identify the dysfunction and you could, unwind and re-engineer that dysfunction, pain's can be gone. You're not going to have the reason for that tissue to have that tendonitis or, that bursa to have an inflammation of bursitis. So that's one of the things that I really focus on here. Now, look, there's great products out there that are non-opioid, like CBD products, to help manage some of that. And there's also modalities that help to really speed up the regeneration of tissues if they are damaged or inflamed, to be able to help get that back to, homeostasis. But the concept of pain management has to be, unthought. We have to think about, listen, pain's not a lifestyle. What's causing it? Let's get the body to do its best healing and fix that so you don't have to experience it. So it again puts responsibility on us, because if somebody's sedentary and they're having pain because they're tight muscles and they're compressed because they're just not moving and they lose blood flow, and lack of blood flow is a big reason because you're not getting oxygen. And that itself is, that's why the sitting's the new smoking. Our bodies aren't able to do all the the work that it does, the recovery and the regenerative processes, because we're not getting enough oxygen. Think about it. When we're sitting, we're just breathing very slowly. We're not taking in a whole lot of more oxygen, which we need for all those processes to happen to fix us. So it's all a question of understanding how we work, how we function, and being willing to invest in what I call the incline of our health, as opposed to just manage the decline of our health. That seems to be the way we've been kind of brought up. And it doesn't have to be that way. We need to be involved. We need to be doing things on a regular basis and avoiding things on a regular basis that are going to promote our body's best healing, our biooptimization. Again, that's the whole concept with that terminology, is doing that as a lifestyle.
Yeah. And I think, just to piggyback on that, I was going to ask, how much of a role does diet and lifestyle play in maximizing your results? Because, like you said, you can only do so much, and then people have to leave and go home and take responsibility for their own lives and incorporate this into their life.
Yeah, I mean, movement and what we're eating is essential. Movement again to promote and preferably outside moving, if possible, because the elements that we live in our natural world actually keep us healthy. The magnetism of the earth, the oxygen that we breathe, the light from the sun, all those things help to optimize energy production at the cell level, because that's getting oxygen into the cell. Sunlight, just like plants grow from photosynthesis, our cells have the ability to absorb light from the sun in the same way, in the same part of the cell that makes energy, the mitochondria, and it'll actually stimulate that energy production. So getting out in the sun, doing, let's say, Wim Hof breathing, where we're taking in more oxygen than we normally are, because we only have about 20% in our atmosphere, but we can actually take in more with breathing techniques that will allow us to get much more than the 20% we're breathing in with a deliberate method. Wim Hof does it really well. There's a couple other breathing techniques, but his is easy to find on the internet. And getting barefoot on the ground, because we are physiologically electromagnetic beings, and we have to recharge ourselves every day because we don't have our own battery. The earth has been our battery for centuries. So the way all of our physiology works depends on the plus and minus charges and how they exchange. Living in this internal environment indoors, all this electricity and devices and all the things we're talking about actually inhibit the normal electromagnetic polarity of our bodies and cause these high frequency electromagnetic fields that really harm us in so many ways. Our cells can't communicate with each other. They can't bring nutrients into the cell from the bloodstream. They can't remove waste products, which causes inflammation at the cell level, to blow up. And so All of these things really come down to, getting the body and understanding what the body's needs are, and just being, determined to give that to your body every day. You have to have a ritual that's part of the habit. The exercise and the diet is so important, but also getting outside. It's part of that. Even if it's going out for, a walk on the grass with bare feet, and getting in the sun at least once a day, just to be able to do that. I remember when we were kids, we spent 90% of our time outside. Now as adults, many times we spend, 90% of our time inside.
Yeah.
And so that has to be deliberate. But, diet and exercise, going back to the original question, so much a part of something that people have to be focused on every day. You have to eat to live, not live to eat. You need to take in the things that are going to benefit you, and, make sure that the things you're going to do are going to have a good, positive drop down effect on your overall body health. And I just want to mention sleep hygiene too. A lot of people don't really focus on sleep as a deliberate thing. They'll stay up at, they'll wake up at, 6 or 7, but they might go to bed at 10, 11, 12, as opposed to saying, okay, where's my 8 hour window? Where am I going to get 7 or 8 hours? And doing that the same every single day, because the body really does well with, with rhythms and staying in that structure. And so people need to focus on sleep as an important thing, because that's where so much of our repair is going on. That's when our brain is doing a lot of its repairing too, because during the day it's active doing the things that are, causing us to move and thinking about things. So it's that sleep that we need, that recovery, but we have to focus and make sure sleep is a very deliberate thing. Try to do it the same time every night, because the body will get used to that and it will function much, much more effectively, when you do that.
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced that from my own life too. So it's like when you have kids and you're running, or a brand new baby, you're running on no sleep. You're like, how in the world is this even possible? And then you start to sleep again and you come back to life. And that's why they use it for like torture too with people.
Yes. Right. Well said. Great point.
Man, I mean, it can make you go crazy. Um, so what types of successes have you seen with these types of treatments that you use in your clinic?
I would say the cold therapy that we started with about 8 years ago was the first thing that we brought in. But then we brought in red light therapy, and more recently, in the last 3 years, it became not just a standalone, the red light, but also step three of what's called the superhuman protocol. Superhuman protocol combines exactly what we were just talking about in nature: magnetism from the earth. So you're laying on this pulsed electromagnetic field, which is optimizing your body's polarity. As it pertains to the protocol, a lot of it is focused on our red blood cells' ability to carry oxygen. Step two, we're actually doing exercise, but breathing oxygen through a mask that's connected to a cylinder that has 98% oxygen purity. Again, we only breathe in 20% of the atmosphere. So while you're exercising, getting your heart rate up with individual sprints, you're taking in 98% oxygen concentration. So you're flooding your tissues with oxygen. And then in step three, you go into the red light. And red light is helping to get oxygen into the cell, displacing free radicals sometimes that block oxygen, and optimizing that. So again, we're going from like a 2 horsepower to a 36 horsepower cell with superhuman protocol. So that's something I adopted for myself, just for my own personal health care, almost 3 years ago. And I've seen so many people, anywhere from just performance enhancement with like UFC fighters or
Hmm.
professional pickleball players, or even somebody that had was in heart failure, had 2 heart attacks, came
Wow.
out of the hospital, and was very debilitated. Their ejection fraction, which was the amount of blood a single beat of the heart will pump. The normal amount of volume should be between somewhere like 55 to 70 milliliters. Well, this young man was only 43 years old. He was at like 25, I think, when he came out of the hospital, and he did superhuman for a month. Next time they measured him, he was up at 50.
Wow.
So they doubled, the superhuman protocol doubled his heart's ability to put out, blood with a single pump. And, of course, the doctors thought it was the 10 medications they put him on, but I know, and he knows, that it was absolutely superhuman protocol, because again, we're not getting something that we're not capable of doing with superhuman, but nobody's walking around with this much energy production and this much oxygenation of their tissues and proper polarity in this modern world of ours. So that was one of the biggest ones I saw. But I also saw a gentleman that had a stroke early last year, 68 years old, very, very debilitated. 6 weeks on the superhuman protocol, and he was completely restored. So
Wow.
the power of just getting oxygen and energy production at the cell level is, again, the thing that restores us. Again, all those 32,000 plus diseases are simply symptoms of not having that.
Yeah, which is so fascinating. It's kind
Yeah.
of encouraging too, right? Because it seems like simple enough, just finding the right protocol, getting your hands on the right things, or just implementing these things into your daily routine that will change or shift the trajectory of your life, essentially.
I would tell you that if you don't feel really good, just doing a handful of things every day can shift things so quickly. Within a week's time, if you start doing it, again, getting barefoot for about a half hour outside, doing some Wim Hof breathing where you're just taking super, super deep breaths and letting them out, doing it, as much as, 10, 20, or even 30 times in a row. And on that final breath, you exhale, you hold it for as long as you can. And you might want to start with 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and keep building it up. But what that does is it increases the delivery system in your body of pulling the oxygen deeper into those tissues than we normally do. And then after you finally can't hold that exhale anymore, you inhale and hold that as long as you can. So it's increasing again that oxygenation of your tissue. And so that's also a great way to just get the oxygen that so many of us are just not getting. And again, getting into sunlight, because all of those things will power up our cells to a level that they should be at. But again, most of us in the modern world aren't doing that. So just doing that alone for a week straight would definitely raise the way your body's functioning and the way you're feeling. The other thing I started doing about, I don't know, 6 years ago, I started drinking mineral salts with my water. There's a couple of companies out there. There's one called Soljar rather, and it's big giant chunks of pink Himalayan salt. And you simply pour water in it, and every morning you just take a teaspoon and put it in your own water. It's got like 86 or 96 trace minerals. And I know Gary Brecka loves Baja salt, Baja Gold, I think it's called, which I've also used too. And so, I always follow him because he's a brilliant guy when it comes to this. And so that's something that he does too. I happen to have been doing it myself with another product. But the idea of getting mineralized, because in order to hydrate properly, we need to have the minerals because the hydration has to happen inside the cell. So, people don't really understand where hydration goes, but we have to draw that fluid and that water into the cell, and it's because of those minerals. That's how we do that. So, again, these are simple things that are very basic to our functioning, but most people, are not doing these things because they don't teach you this stuff.
Yeah, and so that was going to kind of be my next question. What would be some
Mm-hmm.
things that people could do at home that if they don't have access to you or a facility like yours, it would be
Mm-hmm.
what? Going outside, grounding yourself,
And
doing the
doing
Wim
deep
Hof
breathing.
breathing. Yep.
Yep. Um, I would definitely suggest that, and definitely suggest, thinking about hydration and hydration. And I'm not talking about drinking Gatorade. I'm talking about getting one of these salts like Soljar or Baja Gold and putting some of that in water first thing in the morning, because the best time to hydrate, because, you've been sleeping for the last 6, 8 hours and you haven't been hydrating. So to do that first thing in the morning is a great thing to do. And to start your day off with these exercises outside is a great way. And what's good about it is that it doesn't cost anything, and you can take it with you wherever you are. If you're traveling, you could still do the same thing. You just have to be very deliberate in planning on it. Just like you have to schedule sleep, you have to schedule this into your day to make sure you're starting it right. Because you can't imagine what the difference is. I do Superhuman Protocol every morning. I'm here at 4 in the morning at my office. Then I go to the gym. Then I get back to work at 7 a.m. So I can't tell you how much energy I'm getting in that first, very beginning part of the day because of including those. And when we visit, like sometime we visit our younger daughter and her family up in Tallahassee, her husband and I will go out into the cold plunge. We'll do Wim Hof breathing in there, feet on the bare ground too, and sitting in the sun and doing these breathing techniques, because I don't have Superhuman, but we have a beautiful setting to do it right outside in their backyard. And so this is something that, my family too have started to adopt, some of my kids too, when they can't do Superhuman, because they do feel the difference. And so this is, it's an easy thing to do, simple. So the hydration step, doing the grounding, earth, wind, and light. And so that's, the other thing that you can take anywhere, but just be deliberate about it. Don't like do it here and there. Do it every single day and watch what happens to your body. We just don't realize how much more we can be doing energy wise when we just give the body what it needs.
So I was asked by one of my friends, what about when you are in like the colder winter states and you can't get out and ground your feet? Is there an alternative of something someone can purchase?
Yes, yes. There's many companies now. Earthing.com is one of them, but there are other companies that make grounding sheets, sheets that you could sleep on, you could work on. If you're sitting at home or at the office would work. They plug into the wall, and of course, every one of our homes or buildings are grounded to the earth because electricity has to be grounded. So you're actually connecting to the earth through these grounding mats when you plug them in, and so that can give you that earth grounding. So you're connecting to the earth through those materials. Usually they're very inexpensive, easy to access, and again they have them for chairs, they have them for beds, and so that's a great way to just include that into your home as just a home use kind of thing to add that grounding part. So it's a great point. If it is too cold to be out there barefoot, then this is a great alternative, and usually very portable too if you're in a situation where you need to travel with it.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you for that. Um, okay, so if they wanted to find a place like yours, is there a network of doctors that offer these services, or what should patients look for when they're um, trying to find somebody like you?
Yeah, so there's two ways. First of all, you can come to physicalevidenceconnect.com. I just need to find out what your zip code is, and I can find out if there's a place nearby. I know a lot of the people around the country that have the same modalities that we have here, and I think because I'm in South Florida, it's a transient place. A lot of time people are here on vacation. They might find me because somebody that they're visiting sees me and they need me for something. And then what I try to do is find somebody back at home for them that might be able to follow up and do these things. So I have different networks, but you could also go to DaVinciMedicalUSA.com or simply Google superhuman protocol. On the Da Vinci website, there are locations, and you just put in, your zip code. But I would encourage you to call me because I have, direct contact with these people in many cases, or with the CEO of Da Vinci himself, Jason Tabot, and I could ask him, for a particular area, does he have anything? Does he recommend a particular place? And a lot of these places, they might not have all three, but they might have really good red light therapy, or they might have PEMF and red light therapy, but not have the exercise with oxygen therapy part. So again, I'd encourage people to reach out to me. I'm happy to be a resource because I've been doing this a long time, and I've come to know where a lot of the best places are. And if you're in a remote place and you just don't have that access, then just make what we talked about, grounding to the earth, deep breathing and getting some sunlight on you, just to do that as a regular, very deliberate thing that you add to your life. It sounds so simple, but it makes such an incredible difference if you're not doing those things.
Yeah, and I think once people start doing that, that's when they start to see the transition in their life and how
Yeah.
simple these small little tweaks, these simple little things can actually help. Okay, so then if somebody wanted to do like the genetic testing and things of that sort, they can go through you even if they don't live in Florida.
Yes, the lab that does it, it happens to be 12 minutes from my office driving, is national. So I've often drop shipped the kits. There's different labs around the country. LabCorp will usually do it, but something called Any Lab Now, which they're all over the place. You can bring these kits right there. They'll draw the blood and they'll send it back to the lab here. At which point, I'll receive the reports and the results. I will get them through email to the client or the patient, and then we'll have a consultation to go over not only the results but any symptoms they might be experiencing, because there's an algorithm that gives the customization of supplements from the reports, but sometimes that changes once you flesh out some of the symptoms somebody might have. Or are they taking certain things that either they shouldn't be taking, or
Mhm.
are they already taking things that they need so they don't need to put it in their custom blend? So that's the best way to do it. Again, physicalevidenceconnect.com. You can reach out to me and inquire about that. It's a very simple process, but the information that you garner for it from it personally is so invaluable.
Okay. And then lastly, because I know I'll get this question, does insurance cover any of this?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it does not. And it's a shame because insurance covers a lot of stuff that is just useless, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm thinking about my own industry, some of the therapies they cover, where some of the really good therapies they just don't. And so that's why I don't take insurance. The cost is for the micronutrient with the methylation test. And again, the methylation test you only take once; it'll never change. These are your genetics. That's about 373 when it's combined with the micronutrient, which is 449. So the first time you do it, it's $822. Once you get all the results and everything is decided on what supplement program you're going to be on, the average price is somewhere between like $130 to about $200 a month, depending on how much deficiency you have and how many supplements are required. But the average is about like 145, 150 a month, where you're getting all the nutrients. So again, every capsule that is made in these blends has every nutrient that you need for your situation. So for $150 for one bag of custom is pretty, considered pretty inexpensive
Hmm.
for what you're getting, because you could easily spend $500 to get all that if you kind of bought them separately.
Yeah, I've experienced that through functional medicine. So, but I always tell people too, I mean, you pay for your health right now or you're going to end up paying for it in the end. And
Right.
think about how much people pay for insurance, which is dependent on, you know, people being sick. So all of us that are
Right.
healthy that never use the insurance are paying for everybody else who is sick all the time. Or
Yep.
and you could give up your $5, $7 Starbucks every day too. I mean, it's just a little suggestion.
Yeah, it's not serving you necessarily,
Yeah.
too. You got to think about what you put in your body. Is it going to serve you? Is it going to serve your health, or is it not? And it's a hard switch to flip sometimes for people.
Yeah.
I find, and you probably would agree with this, I think most people that are motivated to do this have experienced some kind of loss of quality of life or some kind of health deficit that's, affected their well-being. I think that in, human nature, it takes something like that to kind of push us into that other direction. I think people that walk around feeling good, they're like, I can keep doing what I'm doing because, I feel good. But
Yeah.
it's those times that affect us that I think we really need to understand how we need to live. It can't be a 6-week program. It can't be a 3-day juice fast. This is a daily thing that we have to invest in. Health is an investment. It's not an expense. And just like you point out, we have to think of it that way.
Yeah. And I think too, I do truly think that so many people function at their lower self. They just are so used to functioning like that. Unfortunately, they feel like that is
They
what's
think it's
normal.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
And I
not.
say everyone should be superhuman and should feel that way every single day.
And wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? that's your
I think it's
that's
possible.
yeah, that's the journey that you're on, right? And
Yeah.
myself the same, just a little bit differently. But um okay, well, I think that kind of wraps up for right now. I would love to do a part two, but thank
Sure.
you so much for answering all these questions. I really appreciate it. I will put all of these in the notes of the podcast, and I will put the links also for Dr. Lippman's, all of his socials, the YouTubes, everything down below in the notes of the podcast. But you can find him again at Boca Raton Chiropractor, and then the website is, what was it again? Physical
Physical
evidence.
evidence connect.com. Yeah, that's where you can give me your information, tell me or ask me questions, give me any scenario you want, and I can respond directly to you.
Perfect. So that is how you will reach Dr. David Lipman. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time, and
Thank you,
we will chat
Vanessa. I was
again.
looking forward to this for a few weeks already.
Yep, same here. I appreciate
Okay,
you.
talk soon. I appreciate you right back.
As always, thank you so much for your time, because at the end of the day, that's the most important currency we have. I hope you took something away from today's episode. Don't forget to follow me at Find Your Wild with a Y on all your socials, as well as following the podcast on any of the platforms that you listen to. And most importantly, I hope you are one step closer to finding your wild.